Thank you for joining me. I'm Marcel Wieder, host of The Point. And today we have Thomas Borwick, the conference organizer for the 55th Annual International Association of Political Consultants Conference, which will be taking place in London, the UK. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Fantastic. Well, you join us at a very exciting political time. But of course, on the 14th, 15th and 16th of November, we'll be having 100 or so political consultants coming to London to have a front row ticket to come and see what could be another Prime Minister.
Well, it's certainly exciting if you're a political consultant or a public affairs person. This conference will attract people from right around the world, from, as I understand it, Australia, Africa, Europe, North and South America. So really, it's a global get-together of some of the top political consultants and public affairs people from around the world. Tell me, how are you organizing this conference?
I think the theme, politics across borders, is really exciting. The concept about looking at what is happening across the societies today really does matter. And we have to remember that voters are people too. On the first day, it's about what's happening in the United Kingdom as we explore things like the Irish division between the border and what it means to have left the EU, Scottish independence, the role of the trade union. We have a fabulous person, the General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, coming to speak to us. We have a variety of different psephologists and other campaign experts to discuss that UK situation and the UK's role in the world on day one. Day two, that's about exploring what's happening in Europe. There's been many new elections happening this year, and I think we have 80% of them being represented at our conference on day two. And then on day three, we look at that on the global perspective. This is going to be about a week after the American elections. So that morning, Guy Benson and people like him will talk about the first feedback on that really exciting midterm process. Then at lunchtime, I believe we have Nigel Farage coming to speak about the UK's role in the world, and ending, of course, with a fabulous evening event with our gala reception. I think it's really important just to highlight the evening entertainment because I know that's where the good networking happens. And most of the time as a political consultant, it can be quite lonely and it can be quite difficult. And that's why we're here to create great connections between other political consultants. So
you have a very action-packed agenda, but it's not all work. I understand you have a number of social events scheduled throughout the conference.
I think the Churchill War Rooms will be the evening entertainment of the first day, and that will be fabulous. To walk through history and to be where the cabinet was on the days and evenings that the bombs dropped across London, to learn and understand politics under oppression. Day two, off to the Royal Opera House, and then a pub crawl around Old London, and then day three, Hurlingham Club. I also hear we might have an opportunity to go inside their Houses of Parliament, which might be the first time an IAPC conference has visited the National Chamber whilst it is sitting.
Excellent. And one of the highlights will be that evening, the final evening, will be the presentation of the Democracy Medal. Can you tell me a little bit about the medal and who this year's recipient will be?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to be public yet on that, but if I am, then please let me know. But what I do know is that each year there is a subcommittee that meet that discuss about those people that have fought for freedom, those people that have gone that very difficult process to say it is wrong that our rights to vote have been denied. And there have been wonderful winners across the world, and some of them might even be coming to this conference this year, and that will be super, super fantastic. I'm not actually sure that we can say who has won, but I do
Actually,
know.
we can, since the IAPC did make an announcement earlier this year.
Fantastic. Well, then you go for it.
Okay. This year's recipient of the Democracy Medal will be Volodymyr Zelensky and the people of the Ukraine. will be honored in receiving this year's Democracy Medal.
Fantastic. I have to say they have amazing.
Go ahead.
It's really, really an amazing job to stand up against Russian aggression there. That's truly fabulous.
Absolutely, and I understand that IAPC will be making a donation in recognition of the work that the Ukrainian people have been doing, and the money will go for humanitarian reasons.
Yes, many of our speakers have waived their fees and costs to come, and we are creating a charity fund to go and donate that to the relief efforts and encouraging better democratic participation in that country.
If people are still interested in registering, and we still have openings for that, where would they go to find out more and to be able to register?
So IAPC.org, the International Association of Political Consultants, IAPC.org, and that has all the details, including those people that want to turn into sponsors. As always, I want to thank our sponsors for providing such a great opportunity for us to get students and new people interested in the political campaign space as well.
So for North Americans, this is probably one of the best times to visit England. The dollar is very strong against the British pound. Not good for people in the UK, but for those who wish to come from North America, from the US, elsewhere, it's a good time. It's also a nice time to be in London, I understand. And so there's opportunities to extend your stay and visit some of the other sites in London and in the UK, or just hop across and visit Europe. There's the Channel or the ferry to get across over to France and then onwards to other places. So London really is a great jumping off point for people who want to come to see the conference and be a part of it. It's 3 days, but then they can extend their stay. Flights are actually quite reasonable at this time of year. It's the shoulder season between the summer peak and the winter holidays.
I know many people will be coming 2 or 3 days before and a few days afterwards. Some will do a bit of a sojourn up to Scotland, some will go and visit Ireland, and many will visit the continent. It's a great option for family as well, and it's about being really exciting on that kid-friendliness for those people that want to go and explore the wider jumping off point, as you describe it, for the rest of the world for an American.
I know some colleagues are coming and visiting the West End to take in a show, as well as going to see a football match while they're in London. So lots of different opportunities to visit London besides the IAPC portion, which we hope and encourage people to do. Any parting thoughts that you'd like to share with people?
I joined my first conference many years ago, and I have to say the business connections I have made from it and that opportunity for advice, mentors and support has really transformed my business as being a member of the IAPC, and I want to give that opportunity for others.
Well, again, the London conference is the 55th Annual International Association of Political Consultants. It's taking, we never discussed, I'll take a moment and discuss the venue that we're at. Where is this being hosted at?
The Horse Guards Hotel, which is barely 150 metres away from the Houses of Parliament. So very easy to get to. And we will give everyone a wonderful excitement at the Horse Guards Hotel, which is just by 10 Downing Street, the office of the new Prime Minister.
That's right. And it's a 5-star hotel with all the amenities. And as you point out, it's located very conveniently to Parliament, to 10 Downing Street. It's just beside the Thames. And really everything that you need is within walking distance of the tube or anything nearby. Easy to get around and a very safe neighborhood.
Yeah, it should be fantastic.
Excellent. So again, the IAPC, the International Association of Political Consultants, 55th Annual Conference will be taking place November 14th to 16th. For those people who are interested in coming to that event, you can register at iapc.org. And there's a link on the main page, on the homepage, to register for the conference. We look forward to seeing people at the conference, and we promise it'll be an exciting, informative, and educational conference. Thomas Borwick is the conference organizer. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us some of the exciting programs that will take place.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Today we're joined by Bud Jackson, who's head of Jackson Group Media and also the associate of Aurora Strategy Global. Bud, great to see you.
Hey, good morning, Marcel.
So, Bud, since we last talked a number of weeks ago, a lot has changed in American politics. Certainly the numbers have now tightened up, and Democrats could be looking at losing both the House and potentially the Senate. A number of factors have played into this, so let's get right down to it. What's your take?
Well, I think, first of all, we shouldn't overreact to tightening, because polls in elections generally tighten as we get closer to the election. People go back to their polls in each side of the party, and then we're left with a small sliver still left to be decided. So to some extent, I'm not surprised that the polls have tightened here. Things that are also at play is, gas prices started to creep up a little bit. The president down here released some more of the strategic reserve to hopefully help with that, and they've started to ease a little bit more. So Democrats are a little bit nervous about that. There is concern in different states on different messaging and whether or not the Democrats are on the right messaging, specifically in Nevada, where we've been harping on the abortion issue and pro-choice in that race. We should not be talking more about the economy. So people are a little bit more concerned about Nevada and the Senate race specifically. And then in Pennsylvania, it's a little bit, what I would describe as a little too close for comfort, in that the Senate race is within almost the margin of error between Fetterman and Mehmet Oz there. The Democratic nominee suffered a stroke in that race early on. He's had a difficult time campaigning to recover from that. There have been disputes over debates. So he is sort of underperforming where he should be, in my opinion. And all you have to do is look at the candidate for governor there, whose name is Josh Shapiro. He's running against a right-wing, what I would identify as an extremist pro-Trumper named Doug Mastriano. And he has over a 10-point lead there. So if he's got over a 10-point lead and Fetterman is, operating within a margin of error, that is, not boding well. So moving forward on the House side of things, the structure of the House race is already sort of in history, for that matter, with a Democratic president in office, already favored the Republicans to begin with. So it was always sort of a reach for Democrats to hope that we could take or maintain control of the House there. So I'm not that optimistic that we keep control of the House. I am optimistic that, we keep the majority in the Senate, however. So it could almost be I don't want to say a status quo election, a status quo back in the old days where we have, one chamber Republican and one Democrat, and at least we'll have the Democratic president if things work well. Some people are saying, hey, maybe the Democrats could lose the Senate. It's entirely possible. Anything could happen still. We're still, we're a couple of weeks away. As you know, Marcel, from being in the business, we're a lifetime away from Election Day, and who knows what's going to happen between then and, who knows what happens internationally, how that impacts inflation here.
So that's a good point. Let me jump in on that point. Inflation is now starting to recede, but we're seeing huge numbers in terms of fresh produce, double-digit increases on staples, bread, milk, dairy products. A lot of Americans are getting sticker shock when they go to their local grocery store. And a lot of people are ascribing blame to the president's policies. How is that weighing in overall in this election?
It is having an impact. How much people ascribe to the president depends really on, I suppose, who you ask, and the pollster asking the question, how they're forming the question. I will say this, that gas prices have a more immediate and noticeable impact, whereas grocery prices are noticeable, but probably not as impactful as you'll see in the gas, because it really impacts on a day-to-day basis, people going to and from work, for example. So that's the indicator that I am most concerned about when I look at what's going on with inflation. So hopefully that number, from a Democratic perspective, will sort of remain steady at least through the election. But the other thing is one other important on inflation, Marcel, and I know I'm droning on already, is that inflation is impactful here, but wages are still relatively high here, and unemployment is still relatively low. So we haven't started to see job loss. So if that became a huge factor, it's a whole nother ballgame. But I think that savings here in the United States, personal savings, household savings, are just starting to go down. I don't think we've reached that critical mass where inflation is just everybody's up in arms, angry, and they want to throw out everyone in office. We're just not there yet.
Well, it's a tipping point. You're right. It hasn't quite reached it. When I look at inflation, I agree with you that the gas prices are the ones that I watch, because people drive by gas stations every day, whereas they go shopping maybe once a week. So they're not seeing it on a regular basis, the price differences. But one thing that is happening is that the Fed has increased the borrowing rate, shocking 75 basis points in the last round, and they're expected to increase it again. That means mortgages and buying a home are going to cost more for people, and those people who are renewing mortgages are going to face sticker shock when they go to their local bank or mortgage company.
Yes, but to the numbers extent needed to influence an election is one thing. I'd be more concerned in terms of voters' minds right now of people that are watching their 401k and retirement accounts, which have taken a wallop over the last year. And
20% down on the S&P index.
Exactly. So look, it's a concern, and all this stuff is sort of swirling around in the pot right now as we head into Halloween season. And who knows what kind of
well, you just raised it. So let me ask you, are we expecting an October surprise?
Well, I guess you have to look at there will be an October surprise in many races. There's October surprises in races I'm already working in, but it's not like we have a presidential race on the ballot where it would be one national October surprise. Who knows? Maybe Saudi Arabia gets really annoyed with something and decides they want to cut production even more and really stick it to us. I'd like to say that I'm not seeing any October surprise, but it wouldn't be a surprise if it weren't a surprise.
Let me jump into, we touched on the fact that there's not a presidential race, but former President Trump is still being an influence in the various elections. He's out there campaigning for a number of candidates. I think it was the Brookings Institute that did a study and showed that 269 candidates for office at both the House and Senate combined, 269, were what they call election deniers. And so how is that having an impact on this race, on this election season?
I don't think the full extent of the impact will be known until the election comes. And the reason I say that is because in many ways, Democrats have been have benefited from really sort of extreme people that supported Trump being nominated by their party. And as a consequence of that, we may very well win some races that could have been even tighter. The governor's race in Pennsylvania, we talked about Pennsylvania again. In Pennsylvania, the governor's race, the Democratic nominee who has that 10-point lead has a 10-point lead because his opponent is a Trump person who is to the far right of the spectrum and, again, in my opinion, nutsoid. Had they nominated a more moderate person, they would have had a better shot of winning there. And the same, with the Senate race there, with Mehmet Oz is kind of well, look, he's another reality TV person. So he's actually doing better because he's not as crazy as the nominee for governor there in that state. And you're seeing that in Georgia, where Herschel Walker was a Trumper, and we're seeing that poll is tight now. But frankly, we're doing better than expected, I think, there, even with the incumbent. Had they nominated a more reasonable, moderate Republican, they probably would be taking that seat away, or at least even closer. So I don't know what's going to happen in that race yet, which is why I say we're not going to know the full extent of his impact until after the election. And that can also be said in terms of who gains power in some of these seats and Secretary of State's races beyond the elections. If election deniers are seated in important positions in states across the country, especially positions that oversee U.S. elections like Secretary of State races, could have profound impact that we won't realize until next year when people are sworn in.
So you mentioned the race in Georgia between Herschel Walker, former NFL superstar, and Senator Warnock, who won in the special election 2 years ago. So that race is tightening up, and notwithstanding that he's had a number of scandals that he's been exposed to.
Right. That goes back to sort of how I initially started on races tightening up. That race is going to tighten up naturally, no matter what. So I wasn't surprised by that. And Herschel Walker hasn't exactly had a good couple of weeks, whereas he holds up a toy badge at a debate, and it was
a real badge. honorary sheriff.
Okay, Herschel Jr. I got one. I think I got one too at Toys R Us a few years ago, and I wish I had one as a prop to hold up to you right now. So between that and he just admitted that he had sent the check for $700, although he claims he doesn't know what it was for, to his former wife, I suppose. He hasn't had good weeks, so it's not like the poll should be moving in his favor as a result of these as some sort of positive catalyst for him. So yes, the polls have tightened, but I still think that Warnock pulls that off.
And in Texas, it looks like Beto O'Rourke is not going to be able to unseat the current Texas governor. A lot of people had high hopes on Beto O'Rourke. He made a splash when he ran for the Democratic nomination, but hasn't been able to really solidify his appeal beyond a very narrow segment of the population.
Stop me if you haven't heard this story before. It's like the same thing, different day. Oh, he started off great. He sucked up a lot of money. People are so excited about him, but he's going to come up short. Texas is a tough place to run and win for governor right now. And Beto has run a good campaign, an aggressive campaign, but it's just tough. And the numbers may not be there for him. Democrats have what I call a problem occasionally with falling in love with a candidate or two who may not even have a shot at winning, but dumping a ton of money in because they produced a very slick video, they have a great story, or our hearts get ahead of our minds and we waste a lot of money in these races. I don't want to say that's the case about Beto historically, but I wasn't convinced that we're ever going to win that race to begin with. So it is what it is at this point.
And in the governor's race in Florida, looks like the Republicans will hold on just barely. And we saw that President Biden was in Florida and standing shoulder to shoulder with DeSantis, the senator for Florida. But no real surprise in that race, I would take it.
No, but as we said earlier, who knows what can happen in the next couple of weeks. Hope remains eternal is all I can say. but yeah, it's not looking great.
Okay. Is there any race that you think could potentially be an upset, either in the House or in the Senate?
Honestly, I am been in this business long enough that anything can happen, and because we're still 2 weeks out, I feel like we're still a lifetime away. The people sitting at home on their couches who aren't in politics, they don't understand probably the extent that we do that, things happen, to say it nicely. So I'm going to reserve judgment, and we'll just see what happens over the next couple of weeks. The election is close, I'll say that.
You think it'll be? And what about voter turnout? There's being talk that this election will see even less people vote than in previous elections.
Yeah, I think that really depends on the state and whether or not it's a battleground state as well. I haven't dipped into it, but you can probably start looking at some vote by mail statistics to see how in some states, like Pennsylvania is just starting. I think Massachusetts probably started as well. There are states, these battleground states that we've been talking about, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada. I think that they'll probably have decent turnout. But if you look at other states where not as much is happening, where millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are being poured in, where they're not happening, turnout probably won't be as brisk as those other states.
And, not that international issues affect domestic politics, but in some cases they do. The ongoing war in Ukraine and the use of drones against Ukraine, as well as cutting oil and energy supplies to Europe, is there a possibility of drawing in the U.S., and will that have any impact on U.S. voters?
It's already having an impact. The war in the Ukraine is causing this spike in gas prices and oil prices, and President Biden has been pretty explicit about that, and which is why they keep calling it Putin's war and Putin's price increases, etc. And I just read a story that Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, said the Republicans might not support more aid to Ukraine if they take the majority. So these things are filtering in, have already been largely at play, especially on the inflation side of things when it comes to this election. So yes, there are international inputs factor U.S. elections, and that's one input. What happens in the UK even, impacts inflation. And we just saw the Prime Minister resign about an hour ago. So that'll impact the stock market. It'll go up, it'll go down. People's retirements will go up and go down and make people uneasy. And that's what we got to look. That's why I say anything can happen the next 2 weeks. All these little things, happen, and maybe there'll be a big bump in the road on the way there too. Who knows?
All right. The U.S. election is the first Tuesday of November. That will be Tuesday, November help me on this one, 8th?
8th, yes.
Okay. So
I need sleep. Everyone in our business needs sleep this time of year.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm in local elections here in Canada, so I'm not getting much sleep either. But want to have you on after the 8th and talk about winners, losers, and what the impact is going forward. Bud Jackson is president of Jackson Group Media and also an associate of Aurora Strategy Global. Thanks so much.